Eleanor's fingers trembled as she reached for the bread. The kitchen was dark, except for moonlight streaming through the tall windows. Her stomach cramped with hunger, so fierce it made her dizzy. 3 days without food. 3 days of watching her little sister's face grow pale and thin. She wrapped her shaking hand around the loaf. It felt warm still, fresh from today's baking. Tears burned her eyes as shame flooded through her. She had never stolen anything in her entire life, but her sister would die without food. The thought made her move faster. The door opened behind her. Light flooded the room. Eleanor spun around, clutching the bread to her chest. Her heart stopped. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad shoulders, dark hair. His eyes were cold as winter ice. He wore fine clothes, even at this late hour. A duke. She knew immediately. Only nobility carried themselves with such power. His gaze moved from her face to the bread in her arms. His jaw tightened. She saw his hand move toward the bell pull. One ring, and servants would come. One ring, and she would hang. "Please," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Please, my sister is starving. She is only 8 years old. I will do anything. I will work. I will scrub floors. I will sleep in the stables. Just please do not call the magistrate." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She hated crying, hated showing weakness. But terror made her desperate. "She will die without food. Please have mercy." The Duke stared at her for a long moment. His face showed nothing, no anger, no pity, nothing at all. He looked like a statue carved from marble, beautiful and cold and utterly unreachable. Eleanor's legs shook beneath her worn dress. The bread felt heavy in her arms. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The kitchen had only one door, and he blocked it completely. Eleanor had not always been this desperate. 2 years ago, she had lived in a small but comfortable home with her parents and sister. Her father worked as a clerk. Her mother sewed dresses for ladies in the village. They were not wealthy, but they were happy. Then fever swept through their town. Her parents died within days of each other. Eleanor was 18. Her sister Margaret was only 6. They had no other family, no one to help them. Her father's employer took their house for unpaid debts. The furniture was sold. Everything gone in a matter of weeks. Eleanor found work as a maid in a great house. The pay was small, but it kept them alive. She rented a tiny room above a stable, one room for both of them. It was cold in winter and hot in summer, but it was theirs. Margaret went to the village school when she could. Eleanor worked from dawn until late at night. Her hands grew rough and red. Her back ached constantly, but they survived. Then the lady of the house accused Eleanor of breaking an expensive vase. Eleanor had not done it. The lady's spoiled daughter had knocked it over during a tantrum, but servants could not argue with nobility. Eleanor was dismissed without pay, without a reference. No one would hire her after that. She spent the last of their money on rent and food. She looked for work everywhere. She begged, she pleaded. Doors closed in her face. People turned away. Margaret grew thinner. Her eyes looked too large in her small face. She stopped playing, stopped smiling, just sat quietly in their room, too weak to move much. Eleanor felt her heart breaking into smaller pieces each day. She went to the church and begged for help. The vicar gave her a lecture about pride and hard work. He gave her nothing else. She stood outside shops and asked for scraps. Some days she got a moldy piece of cheese. Some days she got nothing but insults. Tonight she had walked for hours, looking at the great houses outside the village, looking for any chance to find food. She had never planned to steal. never imagined she could. But then she saw the kitchen window slightly open, saw the lamplight inside, smelled fresh bread. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She climbed through the window. Her dress tore on the latch. She did not care. She just needed food. Just enough to keep Margaret alive a few more days. Now she stood frozen in front of this cold-eyed duke, waiting for judgment, waiting for the end. She thought of Margaret alone in their room. Who would tell her? Who would take care of her? The thoughts made Eleanor want to scream, but she just stood there silent and shaking, with tears running down her face. The Duke's name was Alexander Thornton. He was the Duke of Ashford, 28 years old, master of vast estates and enormous wealth. People bowed when he walked past. Women fluttered their fans and tried to catch his eye. Men sought his favor and friendship. He had everything anyone could want, and he felt nothing but emptiness. 2 years ago, his young wife had died in childbirth. The baby died too. A son. Alexander had loved his wife deeply. Her death destroyed something inside him. He closed off his heart, threw himself into managing his estates, worked from dawn until late at night. Anything to avoid thinking, avoid feeling. His mother begged him to return to society, to find another wife, to try again. He refused. He wanted no part of love or marriage or family. Those things brought only pain. He had come down to the kitchen tonight because he could not sleep. Nightmares woke him often. Dreams of his wife calling for him, of his son crying, of blood and death and loss. He wandered his house at night like a ghost. The servants had learned to ignore him. Tonight he wanted tea, something warm to chase away the cold that lived inside him. Instead, he found this girl, this thin, shaking creature with enormous eyes and tears streaming down her face. She looked half-starved herself. Her dress was more patches than original fabric. Her shoes had holes, but her face was lovely, despite the dirt and tears. Delicate features, large hazel eyes, dark hair falling from a messy bun. She held the bread like it was more precious than gold. Something stirred inside Alexander. Something he thought had died with his wife. Not desire, not attraction. Something stranger, recognition perhaps. He saw desperation in her eyes, real desperation. Not the manufactured drama of society, ladies. This girl truly believed she was about to die, and she was more worried about her sister than herself. Her first words were about the child, not begging for her own life, begging for her sister. Alexander thought of his own dead child, the son he never got to hold. Pain lanced through his chest. He pushed it down, buried it deep where he kept all his feelings. He looked at this girl and made a decision. A mad decision, one that made no sense. But he spoke before he could change his mind. "You will marry me," he said. His voice was cold and flat. "Or you will hang for theft. Those are your choices. Decide now." Eleanor stared at him. Her mouth fell open. She could not have heard him correctly. "Marry you?" Her voice came out as a squeak. "Your Grace, I do not understand." "It is quite simple," Alexander said. He leaned against the doorframe, crossed his arms over his chest. "I need a wife. Society demands it. My mother will not stop pestering me until I marry again. You need safety and food and a home for your sister. I am offering you all 3 things. In exchange, you will be my duchess. You will attend events with me when necessary. You will manage my household. You will perform all the duties expected of a wife." He paused. His eyes were hard as stones. "You will share my name and my home. Nothing more. We will live separate lives under the same roof. I will not touch you. I will not bother you. You will have comfort and security." Your sister will be fed and clothed and educated. All you must give up is your freedom. Eleanor's mind spun. This could not be real. Dukes did not marry starving thieves. This was madness. Why? She whispered. Why would you offer this? Because I am tired of my mother's interference, Alexander said. Because I need society to stop expecting me to feel things I no longer feel. Because a wife will silence the gossip and the matchmaking, and because you are desperate enough to agree without foolish romantic notions. His lip curled slightly. You will not expect love or affection from me. You will not weep and complain about neglect. You will simply play your part and enjoy your comfort. It is more than you have now. It was true. It was cold and cruel and absolutely true. Eleanor looked down at the bread in her hands, looked back up at this man's frozen face. My sister, she said carefully. She will truly be cared for. She will have food and warm clothes and a good education. She will have everything she needs, Alexander said. I give you my word. Eleanor knew she should refuse, knew this was wrong in every possible way. But Margaret's pale face filled her mind, her sister's weak voice asking if there would be food tomorrow. Eleanor had lied and said yes. Now she could make that lie true. She could save Margaret. All it would cost was her own future, her own hope of real love someday. But what hope did she really have? Who would marry a penniless girl with no family and no prospects? This duke offered security, safety, survival. I accept, she said quietly. I will marry you, Your Grace. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or perhaps disappointment that she had given in so easily. Very well, he said. Keep the bread. Feed your sister. Tomorrow morning, a carriage will come to collect both of you. Be ready. He turned to leave, then looked back over his shoulder. What is your name? Eleanor, she said. Eleanor Winters. My sister is Margaret. Eleanor, he repeated. The name sounded strange on his lips, foreign, like a word from another language. I am Alexander Thornton, Duke of Ashford. In 3 days, you will be my Duchess. I suggest you prepare yourself. Then he walked away, left her standing in the kitchen with bread in her arms and a future she could not begin to imagine. Eleanor did not sleep that night. She returned to their tiny room above the stable, fed Margaret small bites of bread and water. Her sister ate slowly, savoring each piece. Eleanor told her nothing about what had happened, just said that things would be better soon, that they were going somewhere safe. Margaret smiled for the first time in weeks. That smile made Eleanor's choice feel right. Whatever happened to her, Margaret would be safe. That was enough. The carriage arrived exactly when the Duke promised. It was the finest thing Eleanor had ever seen. Black lacquer with gold trim, 4 matched horses, a driver in elegant livery. Servants from the stable yard stopped to stare. Eleanor held Margaret's hand and climbed inside. The seats were soft as clouds, velvet cushions. Margaret's eyes went wide with wonder. She pressed her face to the window and watched the countryside roll past. They arrived at the Duke's estate an hour later. Eleanor's breath caught. She had never seen anything so grand. The house was enormous. 3 stories of pale stone, dozens of windows glinting in the sunlight. Manicured gardens stretched in every direction, fountains, rose bushes, marble statues. It looked like a palace from a fairy story, except this was real. This was going to be her home. A housekeeper met them at the door. Mrs. Davies. She was a stern-looking woman with grey hair and sharp eyes, but her voice was kind when she spoke. Welcome, Miss Winters. His Grace has instructed us to prepare rooms for you and your sister. Come with me, please." Eleanor followed her through hallways that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered in paintings, the floors were polished marble, everything gleamed with wealth and care. Margaret clung to Eleanor's hand, overwhelmed by the grandeur. Finally, Mrs. Davies opened a door. "These will be your rooms, Miss Winters. The young miss will have the adjoining chamber." Eleanor stepped inside and nearly fainted. The room was beautiful. A large bed with silk curtains, a wardrobe, a writing desk, windows overlooking the gardens. Her own room had rugs and paintings and furniture that must cost more than she had earned in her entire life. Margaret's room was smaller, but equally lovely, done in soft yellows and whites. A small bed with a white coverlet, toys on the shelves, books. Margaret made a small sound of joy and ran to touch the toys with gentle, disbelieving fingers. "His Grace has arranged for a seamstress," Mrs. Davies said. "She will come tomorrow to make your wedding dress and other necessary clothing. The wedding will be in 3 days. A small private ceremony in the estate chapel. Is there anything you need immediately?" "A bath?" Eleanor asked hesitantly. "For both of us, and perhaps some food." Mrs. Davies's expression softened. "Of course, dear. I will have hot water brought up at once and a good meal." She paused at the door. "His Grace is not an easy man, but he is not cruel. You will be safe here." Then she left, closing the door gently behind her. Eleanor sank onto the bed. It was so soft, so impossibly soft. Margaret climbed up beside her. "Ellie," she whispered, "is this real? Are we truly staying here?" "Yes, Maggie," Eleanor said. She wrapped her arms around her sister. "We are staying. You will be safe and warm and fed. I promise." "But why?" Margaret asked. "Why is the Duke letting us stay?" Eleanor chose her words carefully. "Because I am going to marry him. I am going to be his wife." Margaret's eyes went huge. "You are going to be a duchess, like in the stories?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "Like in the stories, except stories had love and romance and happy endings. This arrangement had none of those things." But Margaret did not need to know that. Let her believe in fairy tales a little longer. The next 3 days passed in a blur. The seamstress came and measured Eleanor for more dresses than she had owned in her entire life. A wedding gown of ivory silk, day dresses, evening gowns, night clothes, everything she could possibly need. Shoes and gloves and bonnets. Margaret received new clothes too. Pretty dresses in bright colors, warm cloaks, sturdy shoes. She looked like a different child. Color returned to her cheeks. Her eyes sparkled with life again. Eleanor barely saw the Duke. He appeared at dinner the night before the wedding, sat at the far end of the long table, spoke only a few words, asked if her rooms were adequate, if she needed anything. She said no, said thank you. He nodded and returned to his meal. His face remained expressionless, cold. He looked at her like she was a piece of furniture he had acquired, necessary but uninteresting. Eleanor tried not to let it hurt. This was a business arrangement. Nothing more. She needed to remember that. The wedding day arrived. Eleanor dressed in the ivory silk gown. It fit perfectly, made her look like someone she did not recognize. The maid styled her hair, pinned it up with small white flowers. Eleanor stared at herself in the mirror. She looked like a bride, a proper bride, but she felt like an imposter, a thief playing dress-up in stolen clothes. The ceremony took place in the small chapel on the estate grounds. Only a handful of people attended. Mrs. Davies, a few senior servants. Margaret, sitting in the front pew with her hands clasped tight. The vicar spoke the words, asked the questions. Eleanor answered in a voice that shook only slightly. Alexander's voice was steady and cold. He slipped a ring onto her finger, gold with a large emerald. It was heavy and foreign, a chain more than a decoration. "You may kiss the bride," the vicar said. Alexander leaned forward. His lips brushed Eleanor's cheek, barely a touch, cold as ice. Then he stepped back. "It is done," he said quietly. "You are the Duchess of Ashford now." He turned and walked out of the chapel without another word. Eleanor stood there in her beautiful dress, with tears burning behind her eyes. Margaret came running up and hugged her tight. "You looked so pretty, Ellie," she said, "like a princess." Eleanor hugged her back. "Thank you, sweetheart." She would not cry, would not show weakness. She had made her choice. Now she would live with it. That night Eleanor waited in her room. Mrs. Davies had told her the Duke wanted to speak with her. Eleanor sat on the edge of her bed, still wearing her wedding gown, her hands twisted together in her lap. She knew what wedding nights meant, knew what husbands expected. Fear and dread pooled in her stomach. Alexander had said he would not touch her, but men said many things before marriage and changed their minds after. The door opened. Alexander walked in. He had removed his jacket. His shirt was open at the collar. He looked less formal, but no less intimidating. His eyes swept over her, took in her obvious fear. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, perhaps. "I told you I would not touch you," he said. His voice was sharp. "I meant it. You have nothing to fear from me." Eleanor's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you, Your Grace. You will call me Alexander," he said. "We are married. Formality is unnecessary in private." He moved to the window, looked out at the dark gardens. "You will have duties as my Duchess. You will manage the household, plan menus, oversee the servants, handle correspondence. My mother will visit next week. You will be polite and planant to her. You will attend church with me on Sundays. Once a month we will go to London for society events. You will dress appropriately and behave with dignity. When people ask about our marriage, you will say it was a love match, a whirlwind courtship. Do you understand?" "Yes," Eleanor said, "I understand." "Your sister may stay here as long as necessary," Alexander continued. "She will have tutors, a governess, everything required for a proper education. When she is old enough, I will provide a dowry and help arrange a good marriage for her." He turned to face Eleanor. His eyes were cold in the lamplight. "I am keeping my part of our bargain. See that you keep yours." "I will," Eleanor promised. "I swear it." Alexander nodded. He walked toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "Your rooms are yours. I will not enter them again without invitation. Mine are in the West Wing. Do not disturb me there." Then he left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Eleanor sat alone in the enormous room. She was a duchess now, had wealth and comfort and security. Her sister was safe. She should feel grateful, happy. Instead, she just felt hollow, empty, like she had traded one kind of prison for another, a prettier prison with silk sheets and fine food, but still a prison. She lay back on the soft bed and stared at the ceiling, wondered how long she could live like this, how long she could breathe in this beautiful, lonely house. The weeks passed slowly. Eleanor learned her duties as Duchess. Mrs. Davies taught her how to manage such a large household. Eleanor proved quick to learn. She had always been clever, good with numbers and organization. Soon she was handling the household accounts, planning meals and events. The servants began to respect her, even like her. She treated them kindly, remembered their names, asked about their families. So different from the previous Duchess. they whispered, so warm and gentle. Margaret thrived. A governess came to teach her reading and arithmetic and history. She grew stronger every day, laughed again, played in the gardens, made friends with the cook's daughter. Eleanor watched her sister bloom and felt her own sacrifice was worth it. Margaret's happiness made everything bearable. But Eleanor barely saw Alexander. He rose early and spent his days managing the estate, rode out to inspect farms and talk to tenants, met with his steward and solicitors, ate dinner alone in his study. Eleanor ate alone in the dining room or with Margaret in the nursery. Sometimes entire days passed without seeing him at all. When they did meet in the hallways, he nodded politely and walked past, like she was a stranger, like they had not made vows before God. It hurt more than Eleanor expected. She had agreed to a loveless marriage, had understood what she was accepting. But actually living it was different, harder. She would see him riding across the grounds and feel a strange ache in her chest, would hear his voice speaking to servants and feel suddenly lonely. She told herself it was foolish, told herself to be grateful for what she had, but her heart would not listen. One afternoon Eleanor was walking in the gardens. She loved the gardens. The roses were her favorite. She spent hours among them, reading or just sitting peacefully. Today she noticed Alexander's steward gesturing toward the rose beds while talking to the head gardener. They looked concerned. Eleanor moved closer, curious. His Grace wants them dug up. The steward was saying, all of them. Says they remind him of painful times. Eleanor's heart clenched. The roses had been planted by the previous Duchess, Alexander's first wife. He wanted to destroy them, erase her memory. Eleanor understood pain and loss, but destroying beauty seemed wrong. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. Pardon me, she said quietly, but perhaps His Grace might reconsider. The roses are very beautiful. It would be a shame to lose them. The steward looked uncomfortable. His Grace was quite firm in his instructions. Your Grace. Eleanor nodded. Of course. Thank you. She walked away, feeling foolish. What right did she have to question his decisions? She was his wife in name only. He owed her nothing, not explanations, not consideration. Nothing. That evening Alexander appeared at dinner, unexpectedly. He sat at the head of the table. Eleanor sat in her usual place, far down the other end. Servants brought food. The silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. Eleanor focused on her plate, tried to eat even though her stomach was in knots. I hear you spoke to my steward today, Alexander said suddenly. His voice was cold. About the roses. Eleanor set down her fork. I apologize, Your Grace. Alexander, I should not have interfered. No, he agreed. You should not have. He was quiet for a moment. But you were right. The roses should stay. Eleanor looked up in surprise. Alexander's face was still expressionless, but something in his eyes looked different. Softer maybe, or perhaps just less frozen. My wife planted those roses, he said quietly. She loved them. When she died, I wanted to tear them out, burn them, erase every reminder, but that would not bring her back. It would just destroy something beautiful, something she created. He met Eleanor's gaze. Thank you for reminding me of that. You must have loved her very much, Eleanor said softly. I did, Alexander said. Pain flickered across his face, more than I thought possible to love anyone. When she died, something inside me died too. I swore I would never feel that way again. Never risk that kind of pain. Eleanor's heart ached for him. She understood loss, understood grief. I am sorry, she said. I lost my parents 2 years ago. I know how it feels when the world stops making sense. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. Seeing her perhaps for the first time since their wedding. Yes, he said slowly. I suppose you do understand. He stood abruptly. Good night, Eleanor. Good night, she whispered. But he was already gone. After that night, something shifted. Small things changed. Alexander began appearing at dinner more often. Not every night, but several times a week. They ate in silence, mostly, but sometimes he would ask about her day, ask about Margaret's progress with her lessons. Eleanor would answer carefully, ask polite questions in return, about the estate. The tenants. His work. He answered briefly, but not unkindly. One evening Alexander asked Eleanor to play the piano. She had not realized he knew she could play. I heard you practicing, he explained. The music carries through the house. Eleanor moved to the piano in the drawing room, sat on the bench. Her fingers trembled as they touched the keys. She had not played for anyone except Margaret in years. She chose a simple piece, something sweet and melancholy. Her fingers moved across the keys. The music filled the room. When she finished, silence fell. She turned and found Alexander standing very still. His eyes were closed. His face showed more emotion than she had ever seen. Pain, longing, grief. That was her favorite, he said roughly. My wife's favorite piece. I am sorry, Eleanor said quickly. I did not know. I will not play it again. No, Alexander said. He opened his eyes, looked at her with something almost like warmth. Please play it again. It has been so long since I heard it. I forgot how beautiful it was. So Eleanor played it again, until Alexander finally nodded and thanked her and left. But after that night he would sometimes appear in the drawing room while she practiced, would sit in a chair in the corner and listen. Never speaking, just listening. Eleanor found herself playing her best for those quiet moments. Found herself hoping he would come. The Duke's mother arrived in late autumn. The Dowager Duchess of Ashford was a formidable woman. Tall and regal with iron-grey hair and sharp eyes, she swept into the house like a queen inspecting her kingdom. Eleanor met her in the main hall, heart pounding with nervousness. The Dowager looked her up and down with an expression that revealed nothing. So you are my new daughter, she said. I confess I was surprised when Alexander wrote that he had married, quite suddenly too. A whirlwind courtship, he said. Yes, Your Grace, Eleanor said. She kept her voice steady. It was quite unexpected. But we are very happy. The Dowager's eyebrow rose. Are you indeed? She glanced around. Where is my son? He is meeting with his steward, Eleanor said. But he should return shortly. May I offer you tea while you wait? That would be acceptable, the Dowager said. Eleanor led her to the drawing room, ordered tea, sat with her back straight, and her hands folded properly. The Dowager studied her with eyes that missed nothing. Eleanor felt like she was being dissected, every flaw examined and noted. You are very young, the Dowager observed, and quite pretty. Tell me, where did you meet my son? Eleanor had prepared for this question. In the village, Your Grace. I was staying nearby with my sister. We met by chance. Alexander was very kind to us. Kind, the Dowager repeated. The word sounded strange on her lips. Alexander has not been kind to anyone since Catherine died. He has been cold and distant and utterly unreachable. Yet you say he was kind to you. Yes, Eleanor said firmly. He was. He still is. The Dowager's expression softened slightly. And does he make you happy, child? The question surprised Eleanor. She opened her mouth to give the expected answer. Yes, of course, very happy. But something in the dowager's eyes stopped her, something knowing and sad. He gives me security and safety, Eleanor said carefully. He has been generous beyond measure to me and my sister. For that I am deeply grateful. Gratitude is not happiness, the dowager said quietly, nor is it love. No, Eleanor agreed, it is not. They looked at each other in silence. An understanding passed between them. Woman to woman, both trapped by duty and circumstance, both making the best of situations, not entirely of their choosing. My son loved Catherine with his whole heart, the dowager said. When she died, he broke. I worried he would never be whole again. Never let anyone close. She set down her teacup. But I see the way you look at him, and I saw him watching you when you walked across the hall. He is not as indifferent as he pretends. Eleanor's breath caught. I do not understand. Give him time, the dowager said. Alexander builds walls to protect himself from pain, but walls can be climbed, or sometimes they crumble on their own. She smiled slightly. You are stronger than you look, Eleanor. You will manage. The dowager stayed for a week. She watched Eleanor manage the household with approval, saw how the servants respected her, how Margaret adored her. She also watched Alexander, noticed how his eyes followed Eleanor across rooms, how he seemed less frozen when she was near. Before she left, she spoke to Alexander privately. Eleanor did not know what was said, but afterward Alexander seemed thoughtful, distracted. Winter came. The estate grew cold and quiet. Eleanor spent more time indoors. She read books from Alexander's extensive library, played the piano, helped Margaret with her lessons. She also spent time going over the household accounts. She discovered the estate spent far too much money on unnecessary things, waste from careless management. Eleanor made careful notes, created a new system. Within a month, she had saved a considerable amount of money. She mentioned it to Alexander one evening at dinner, showed him her figures, explained her changes. Alexander studied the papers with growing surprise. This is excellent work, he said. You have a talent for management. Eleanor felt warmth bloom in her chest. Thank you. I enjoy it. Puzzles and numbers have always made sense to me. Would you be willing to take on more responsibility? Alexander asked. The steward is old and ready to retire. I have been searching for a replacement, but perhaps you could assist me directly. Review accounts. Suggest improvements. I would like that very much, Eleanor said. Pleasure made her smile. A real smile. The first in months. Alexander stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes. You should smile more often, he said quietly. It suits you. Eleanor's cheeks grew hot. She looked down at her hands. I have not had much reason to smile in recent years. No, Alexander said. I suppose you have not. He was quiet for a moment. I realize I have been distant, cold. You deserved better from me. You never promised me anything beyond safety, Eleanor said. You have kept your word, perhaps, Alexander said, but you have given me more than I expected. You have made this house feel warm again. The servants are happier. The household runs smoothly. Margaret is thriving, and he paused, seemed to struggle for words. I find I enjoy your company, when we talk at dinner, when I hear you play. These small moments are not unpleasant. Eleanor's heart began to beat faster. They are not unpleasant for me either. Their eyes met across the table. Something passed between them, something fragile and new. like the first green shoots of spring pushing through frozen ground. Alexander looked away first. "It is late," he said. "I should let you rest." "Yes," Eleanor said softly. "Good night, Alexander." "Good night, Eleanor." After that evening, they spent more time together. Alexander invited her to ride with him around the estate. Eleanor had not ridden in years, but the skill came back quickly. They rode through fields and forests. Alexander pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the land and the people who lived on it. His passion for his estates was clear. He cared deeply about his responsibilities, about the tenants who depended on him. "You are a good landlord," Eleanor observed one afternoon. They had stopped beside a stream to rest the horses. "The tenants speak highly of you. They say you are fair and generous." "I do what duty requires," Alexander said. But he looked pleased. "It is more than duty," Eleanor said. "You genuinely care about them." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "My father taught me that title and land are not privileges. They are responsibilities. We are stewards of this place, caretakers for future generations. If we fail in that duty, we deserve to lose everything." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Alexander said. "I miss him, and my mother, though she is still living, miss who she used to be. She was happy once, before my father died. Before I lost Catherine. Now she worries constantly. Tries to control everything because she fears losing more." "Grief changes us," Eleanor said softly. "I used to be brave and confident. Now I am afraid of everything. Afraid of losing what little I have. Afraid of wanting more." Alexander looked at her intently. "What do you want, Eleanor?" The question hung in the air between them. Eleanor could not answer, could not admit the truth, even to herself. That she wanted his smile, his conversation, his presence, that she was falling in love with her cold, distant husband, and it terrified her. "I want Margaret to be happy," she said finally. "That is enough." Alexander's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just mounted his horse and rode back toward the house. Eleanor followed, wondering what she had done wrong. That evening Alexander did not appear at dinner. Eleanor ate alone, feeling miserable. She had disappointed him somehow, said something wrong. Perhaps he was tired of her company, tired of pretending civility. She went to bed early, heart heavy with worry. In the middle of the night, a knock woke her. Eleanor opened her door to find Alexander standing in the hallway. He wore just shirt sleeves and breeches. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were wild. "I cannot sleep," he said roughly. "I cannot stop thinking. May I come in?" Eleanor stepped back. Let him enter her room. He paced to the window, looked out at the dark gardens. His shoulders were tense. His hands clenched at his sides. "I have been lying to myself," he said, "telling myself I wanted nothing from this marriage, that you were just convenient, a solution to a problem." He turned to face her. "But I want more. I want your smiles, your laughter, your company. I want to talk with you and ride with you and hear you play. I want to know everything about you, your thoughts, your dreams, your fears." His voice grew rough. "I am falling in love with you, Eleanor, and it terrifies me, because I cannot survive losing someone I love again." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Alexander, tell me to leave," he said. "Tell me you do not want this. Tell me to go back to being distant and cold. I will do it. I will give you the peaceful existence I promised." "I do not want that," Eleanor whispered. "I want you. I want this. I want whatever you can give me, even if it frightens you, even if it frightens me too." Alexander crossed the room in 2 long strides, took her face in his arms. "I do not deserve you," he said. "You are brave and kind and beautiful. Everything I am not." "You are wrong," Eleanor said. "You are all those things. You just forgot for a while." He kissed her then, soft and gentle at first, then deeper, pouring all his loneliness and longing and fear into that kiss. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him, kissed him back with everything she felt, all her love and hope and desperate need to be wanted, to be valued, to matter to someone. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the dark. Finally Alexander pulled back, rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I did not think I could love anyone again, but you brought me back to life." "I love you too," Eleanor said. Tears streamed down her face. "I have loved you for weeks, months maybe. I just did not dare hope you might feel the same." "I do," Alexander said fiercely. "I feel everything for you." He kissed her again, tender and worshipful, like she was something precious and fragile. When he finally left her room, Eleanor lay in bed and smiled at the ceiling. Her heart felt full to bursting. For the first time in years, she was truly happy. The next weeks were like a dream. Alexander was still reserved in public, but in private he was warm and attentive. He held Eleanor's hand as they walked, kissed her good night, told her stories about his childhood, listened to hers. They laughed together, shared meals, spent evenings reading side by side in the library. Margaret noticed the change and was delighted. "You are both smiling so much," she said happily, "like people do in fairy tales." Eleanor thought perhaps it was a fairy tale, an impossible one that had somehow come true. She had been starving and desperate, and now she was loved, cherished, safe. Alexander showed her the estate records, asked her opinions, valued her intelligence. He bought her gifts, books she mentioned wanting. A new piano with better tone, a mare of her own for riding. Nothing expensive or showy, just thoughtful things that showed he paid attention, that he cared. In December, Alexander's mother returned for Christmas. She took one look at Alexander and Eleanor together and smiled knowingly. "I see walls have crumbled," she said to Eleanor privately. "I am glad. You are good for him, better than good. You are his salvation." Christmas was magical. The house was decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. Margaret was beside herself with excitement. On Christmas morning, Alexander gave Eleanor a gift, a necklace of emeralds that matched her ring. "To replace the ring you wear as obligation," he said quietly. "This is given with love." Eleanor cried and kissed him. "I treasure the ring," she said, "because it made me your wife. But I treasure this more because it shows you treasure me." Everything was perfect, too perfect. Eleanor should have known it could not last. In early January, a carriage arrived at the estate unexpectedly. Eleanor was in the drawing room with Margaret when Mrs. Davies announced visitors. A man and woman, well dressed, haughty expressions. The woman looked Eleanor up and down with cold eyes. "So you are the little thief," the woman said, "the one who stole my position." Eleanor's blood went cold. She recognized the woman now, Lady Catherine Winters, the employer who had dismissed Eleanor, the one who accused her of breaking the vase. But why was she here, and who was the man with her? "Lady Catherine," Eleanor said carefully, "what brings you to Ashford?" "Do not play innocent," Lady Catherine sneered. "I know what you did. You wormed your way into the Duke's bed, made him marry you with lies and manipulation, but it will not work. I am here to expose you for what you are." Alexander appeared in the doorway. His face was cold as winter. "What is the meaning of this?" The man stepped forward. "Your Grace, I am Lord Robert Winters. This is my wife. We have come to inform you that your Duchess is not what she seems. She was dismissed from our household for theft and lies. She is a criminal, a deceiver." "Eleanor was stealing because she was starving," Alexander said. His voice was dangerously quiet. "Because you dismissed her without cause and left her and her child sister to die. I know the entire story. She has hidden nothing from me." Lady Catherine looked shocked. But she trapped you, made you marry her. A duke does not marry a common thief." "I married Eleanor because I chose to," Alexander said. Steel rang in his voice. "Because she is brave and intelligent and kind. Because she is worth 100 of your sort. You came here expecting to destroy her. Instead, you have only revealed your own cruelty." "Society will never accept her," Lord Robert said. "When word spreads about her past, you will be ruined, both of you." "Let society think what it will," Alexander said. "I care nothing for their opinions. Eleanor is my wife, my Duchess. She will be treated with respect, or those who insult her will answer to me." He moved to stand beside Eleanor, took her hand. "Now leave my house. You are not welcome here." Lord Robert's face flushed red with anger. "You will regret this, Your Grace. Mark my words." "The only thing I regret," Alexander said coldly, "is not throwing you out sooner. Leave, now." They left, but the damage was done. Eleanor stood frozen, trembling. Margaret was crying. The whole beautiful dream was crumbling. "They will destroy us," Eleanor whispered. "Society will turn against you. Your reputation will be ruined. All because of me." "I do not care," Alexander said fiercely. He pulled her into his arms. "Let them talk. Let them gossip. You are worth everything to me. Do you understand? Everything." But Eleanor could not stop shaking. "You will lose everything. Your position, your respect, everything you have worked for. Then I will lose it," Alexander said. "But I will not lose you. That is the only thing that matters." The rumors spread quickly. By the end of the week, London society was buzzing with gossip. The Duke of Ashford had married a common thief, a girl with no family or position. Scandal, outrage, demands that he annul the marriage. Letters arrived daily, some from friends expressing disappointment, some from strangers offering insults. Eleanor read them and felt sick with guilt. She was destroying him, destroying everything. "We should separate," she said one evening. "Let me go away, take Margaret somewhere far from here. You can tell society we separated due to incompatibility. Your reputation will recover." "No," Alexander said flatly. "I will not let you go." "But you are losing everything because of me," Eleanor cried. "Your friends, your position, everything." "I am losing nothing that matters," Alexander said. He took her hands in his. "Eleanor, listen to me. Before I met you, I was already lost. Already dead inside. Wealth and position meant nothing because I was empty. You gave me back my life, my heart, my ability to feel joy again. I would give up every title, every acre of land, every penny I possess, before I would give you up. Do you understand? But society, damn society," Alexander said roughly. "I have spent my entire life doing what society demands, being proper, being respectable, being cold and controlled. I am tired of it. I want to live, to love, to be happy, and you make me happy." Eleanor searched his face, saw only truth there, only love. "I am afraid," she whispered. "So am I," Alexander admitted. but we will face it together. 3 days later, Alexander did something no one expected. He hosted a ball, invited all of London society, sent out invitations to everyone, lords and ladies, politicians, influential families, everyone. Most assumed they were invited to witness his annulment. His return to respectability. They came eager for spectacle and gossip. The night of the ball, Eleanor, dressed in her finest gown, deep emerald silk that matched her necklace. Her hair was styled elegantly. She looked every inch a duchess, but her hands shook as she descended the stairs. The ballroom was full. Hundreds of people, all turning to stare at her with judgment and curiosity. Alexander met her at the bottom of the stairs, offered his arm. Together they walked into the ballroom. Conversation stopped. People stared. Eleanor felt their eyes like physical weight, felt their scorn and disapproval. Alexander's hand tightened on hers, steadying her, giving her strength. He led her to the center of the room, raised his voice so everyone could hear. Thank you all for coming tonight. I asked you here to address the rumors circulating about my marriage. There has been much speculation, much gossip, so I will speak plainly. The room was utterly silent. Everyone leaned forward, eager for scandal. I married Eleanor in haste, Alexander said. Not because I was trapped or deceived. I married her because she was desperate and I had the power to help. I married her out of convenience. But I stayed married to her because I fell in love. His voice rang clear and strong. She was born common. Yes. She worked as a maid. She stole food because she was starving. These things are true, but they do not define her. Eleanor is intelligent and brave and kind. She manages my household with skill. She saved my estate thousands of pounds through careful accounting. She brought warmth and joy back into my life when I had given up hope. She is the best thing that ever happened to me. He turned to Eleanor, looked into her eyes with such love, it made her breath catch. I am proud to call her my wife, proud to call her my duchess, and if society cannot accept her, then society can go to hell. Gasps echoed through the room. Several people looked shocked, offended, but others were nodding, smiling. Eleanor saw Alexander's mother in the crowd. The dowager was beaming with pride. Saw friendly faces among the crowd too, people who valued love over propriety. This woman saved my life, Alexander said, speaking to Eleanor now instead of the crowd. She gave me reason to live again, reason to feel again. I love her more than I have words to express, and I will spend the rest of my life proving to her that she deserves every happiness. Eleanor's eyes overflowed with tears. Alexander, she whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, kissed her in front of everyone, a kiss that held nothing back, that declared his love to the entire world. When he pulled back, he smiled at her, a real smile, full of warmth and joy. I love you, he said, forever. I love you too, Eleanor said. The room erupted. Some people applauded. Others looked scandalized, but Eleanor did not care. She was in Alexander's arms, safe and loved, and valued. Nothing else mattered. In the days after the ball, some families cut ties with Alexander, refused to acknowledge Eleanor, but many others came forward in support, people who valued substance over shallow propriety, who believed in second chances and true love. Alexander's closest friends stood by him. His mother embraced Eleanor as a true daughter. The estate staff threw a celebration. Margaret was overjoyed. It is exactly like a fairy tale, she said. The poor girl marries the prince, and they live happily ever after. Not a prince, Eleanor corrected with a smile. A duke. Same thing, Margaret said confidently. Eleanor had to agree. Her life had become something from a storybook. She woke each morning beside the man she loved, managed the household with pride and skill, spent evenings playing piano while Alexander listened with contentment on his face. They rode together, read together, laughed together, rebuilt their lives together. Spring came, the roses bloomed in the garden. Alexander and Eleanor walked among them one evening. He pulled her close and kissed her beneath the flowering branches. "Thank you," he said softly, "for saving me." "You saved me first," Eleanor reminded him. "We saved each other," Alexander said. "That is the best kind of love." Eleanor agreed. She had been starving and desperate. He had been cold and broken. Together they had found warmth and fullness and joy. They had built something beautiful from ashes and despair, and now they would spend the rest of their lives tending that love like the roses in the garden, helping it grow, keeping it strong. 1 year later, Eleanor held a baby in her arms, a daughter with Alexander's dark hair and Eleanor's hazel eyes. Alexander sat beside her, looking at their child with wonder and joy. "She is perfect," he said. "She is," Eleanor agreed, "and she will grow up knowing she is loved, always, as you are loved," Alexander said. He kissed Eleanor's forehead. "As you always will be." Eleanor smiled. Her journey had been hard, painful, terrifying, but it had led her here, to this perfect moment, to this perfect life. She had stolen bread to survive. Alexander had offered her a choice: pay with her body or hang. But what he really offered was salvation, hope, love. And she had chosen love, chosen him, chosen herself. And in return, she received everything she never dared to dream of: a home, a family, a love that would last forever. Some might say she had been lucky. That fortune smiled on her. But Eleanor knew better. Luck had nothing to do with it. She and Alexander had fought for their happiness, faced society's judgment, overcome fear and pain and loss. They had chosen each other every day, chosen love over duty, warmth over coldness, joy over empty propriety. That was not luck. That was courage. And they would live courageously ever after.